Guys, I hope you are doing very well. I've drunk a whole pint of coffee, so this should be quite a buzzy video. I'm getting very excited, to be honest with you. I think there's a massive convergence happening. It's not quite there yet, of different streams of energy that have seemed opposing but might actually find confluence over this summer, I hope. And I want to show you some of the conversations that make me think that way at the moment. If you remember part 3 of the beautiful irrationality dialectics, it was Peterson versus Harris, and they were talking in 2 different languages that were struggling to talk with each other, and they didn't get very far in the conversation. Today, we're going to look at a couple of things, but to start with, I want to show you Peterson and Stephen Fry. Then we'll talk about Sam Harris and Lex Friedman, talking with these different people. They're both more relaxed, and you can see a bit more of their views, and it's really exciting. Firstly, let's go into Peterson and Fry.
I'm very curious about that. I mean, someone like Dawkins, he's so rational. Yeah. He's not gripped by drama in the same way you are. And there's a truth in drama that's not trivial, and that truth is allied with religious truth.
So Peterson finally gets Fry, and he's just dog to a bone. First thing he's talking about is this. He's hoping that out of the sort of atheist humanistic voice that Stephen Fry might come closer to his world than Dawkins and Harris.
Yes, you're right, he's a rationalist, and I don't think I am. I think I'm an empiricist. That's part of my love of drama and myth and story and literature and history even, is these are all to do with experience, with human experience, the register of human experience, of testing an idea against what actually happens and how people actually behave, rather than devising a system of reason.
Stephen Fry, what a legend anyway, but the way he articulates this empiricism is so beautiful to me and resonates deeply with my mode of doing and being in the world. I'm much more interested in doing something in the real world, having an experience, finding that there is something intuitively of value within it, and then trying to unpack it and understand how that works and why that works. To show a clear distinction between the rationalists and the empiricists is a beautifully unlocking thing that Stephen's done there. Basically, it's a 2-hour conversation, loads of other stuff gets talked about, and then right at the end, the dog gets the bone again, and Peterson comes back in to try and bring it back to the beginning.
Back to the distinction between you and Dawkins, because I see you as a border figure. You've got one foot in the rationalist, humanist, atheist, empiricist world firmly planted, but then there's the artist in you, which is a major part of your personality. Obviously a part that's incredibly productive and very well received, and that has an intellectual end as well. That domain, that second domain that you occupy, the investigation of that isn't formalized as well by the atheist community.
No, you're right.
They lose what's there, and they don't value it properly, and that's a problem.
So this goes back to the conversation that Harris had with Peterson, which we documented in part 3, where Peterson is asking, where's the art? Where's the music? Where's the culture that comes from this humanist movement? And Harris didn't really have an answer for it. And my contribution was that art doesn't belong to the religious or to the atheistic, but to the irrationalists, those that are willing to be open and remove their self-imposed teleology and actually be open to induce unstrategized bits of creation and breathe them into being. And Fry's position as an empiricist is one that kind of seeks to evaluate those pieces of inducted creativity by what was the experience of them? What did it do? Did they meet with anyone? Did it land with anyone? Did it make a difference? And if so, maybe we should investigate further. For me, the empirical self-observation or self-evidencing way of engaging with the world is both different to the science and religion methodologies, but it's not the same as pure creativity, but goes hand in hand really with creativity, because we should evaluate creativity on the basis of what experience did it create for people. If you make something and it becomes destructive and starts ruining lives, well, then we shouldn't put more into it. But let's let them go on.
And lots of them are nihilistic. Because they're nihilistic, they're suicidal.
I feel from Peterson that he's seen and experienced a lot of trauma over the years in his clients as a psychologist. And so he's desperate. And I think that's why he's so successful, to provide meaning and value for people so that they don't want to end their lives. And this is why he just cannot give into the Sam Harris world of let's focus on reality and just hit and hope that the culture emerges naturally. He wants to know that we're going to protect it and value it more so that we don't accidentally throw the baby out.
I had a friend, I went for a walk with him the other week, and he was a communist, an atheist when he was a kid. He grew up in Poland, and he had criticized his family for celebrating Christmas because it was irrational. And then he realized at one point, he said, I could kill Christmas and we just have another weekend. That wouldn't actually, right, because there's a magic there.
Yeah.
That rationalism can destroy.
Yeah, I have exactly that problem politically with the royal family, which on the face of it is, of course, preposterous, more preposterous even than Christmas and religion is the idea that we still have a royal family. But part of my belief in ceremony and ritual and symbolism, if every week they had to walk up the hill and go into a mansion in Washington, and there was Uncle Sam in a top hat and striped trousers, a living embodiment of their nation, more important than they were. That's the key. Uncle Sam, is America. The president is a fly-by-night politician voted for by less than half the population, and he has to bow in front of this personification of his country every week. And that personification, Uncle Sam can't tell him what to do. Uncle Sam can't say, no, pass this act and don't pass that act and free these people, give them a pardon. All he can do is say, tell me, young fella, what you done this week? And he'll bow and say, well, Uncle Sam, say, oh, you think that's the right thing for my country? Well, that's what a constitutional monarchy is. Of course it's absurd. But the fact that Churchill and Thatcher and everyone had to bow every week in front of this there's something. Also, empirically, look at the happiest countries in the world, and they happen to be constitutional monarchies. Norway's. I can see the absurdities of the claims of many religions, and I can see the history of the wickedness and oppression and suppression, particularly in my own instance, being gay growing up.
This is beautiful. For me, this is some of the best conversation I've ever witnessed, to be honest with you. The link that Fry is able to make from Peterson's story about the myth of Christmas and the value of that, the magic of that, to the myth of our monarchy and the value of that. I love that connection. I think we can do better than looking to Uncle Sam or the Queen as our coach or as our thing we bounce stuff off when we're at the top of whatever food chain we're a part of. I agree, it could be handy. And in his empirical way, look at the data. We may not know the science, we might not have all the reasons, but we can see that it seems to have an effect on how societies run if there's a kind of somewhat of a layer of infrastructure above the administration. We are in a moment right now with YouTube where YouTube as a platform has grown. These voices have grown out of that platform and they are at their peak, with sort of Lex Friedman, who we'll listen to in a minute, coming in as a late joiner. And this conversation that's swirling around is hitting somewhat of a crescendo, I think, in our generation, unfolding dialectic of society as we're reconstituting ourselves, as every generation does. Fundamentally, what they're talking about here is the decoupling of church and state. Church being the subscribed story and state being the administration of rules and power and economics, and basically keeping them separate, because they're basically saying having the Queen or Uncle Sam is valuable, maybe having a god of some kind is valuable, but whatever our current mythology and conception of that story, which is of value to our modeling, shouldn't be the one that's in control of the rules. And I agree with that. And also the way Stephen articulates, it's absurd. I know it's absurd. There's a pejorative tone to the word absurd. But in the same way that I've been asking, can we have a beautiful irrationality? I could say the same about absurdity. We need some beautiful absurdity in how we come together. We need some stories that provide a container for magic. We need to hold on to some of those absurd stories that help us see more clearly and get rid of the absurd stories that don't lead us to beauty and to clarity of understanding of the world and of what we value. Not all absurd stories are bad.
That's how quickly morality changes. So the idea of the culture is a false one. There is no the culture. It's not like a human version of a biosphere, even, I don't think. what religion has been brilliant at, and it's needed to be, but so has science, is redefining what God is. What God was in 1400, he was answerable for everything, and we worshipped him for it. A couple of hundred years later, a few things have been taken away from him. And similarly, science, we use the word cosmos. Well, cosmos used to mean a very small sphere of the solar system, and now it's some infinite thing, and there may indeed be dozens of them, millions of them. Everything is redefined in each generation. So what is left that is absolute? And this is where religion has an argument with intellectual progress, because it wants to hang on to something that it believes is eternal and permanent and utterly always true. But there is no such thing. The morality, I did a debate with Christopher Hitchens actually about the Catholic Church and the people defending it when we attacked their attitude towards child sex scandals, said, well, in the 1960s it wasn't such a big sin. That is actually true. But it's not true coming from a Catholic whose whole point is that they are eternally true, that their morality is as true now as it was when St. Peter founded the church. Their enemy is people like me who are relativists, who say that there is no absolute morality, but that things change according to situation, circumstance, and knowledge. It's a shrinking kingdom. So the idea of there being an absolute and an eternal, it just doesn't seem to square with the way we have developed certainly over history, which is to say over the last 5,000 years, since we've been able to write things down.
Another amazing chunk there. Fry's comments on religion's tendency to want to derive absolute morality, making eternal claims, even though his observation is clearly the terrain of the divine is changing with our ever expanding, adapting body of observation and then of science, and how absurd in a bad way it is that the Catholics he's encountered attempt to make eternal claims, yet clearly their morality is adapting over time. And I love what he says. There's no the culture, the with a capital T at the beginning of the sentence. Sentences beginning with the are predicated on a kind of an averagarian philosophy that we can actually say this. But to me, the truth of life is experienced at a much more grassroots, individual level, moment by moment, day by day. And therefore, what can be seen as an evolution of morality over generations, we should be able to drill into with our moments telescope and look into each moment and assess our moral evaluation at a much more granular level, at 1,000 times magnification. This is the reality of life. How will I be with you in this moment? What does good look like in this moment? But with that kind of microscope, answers become far less useful than the questions. For me, the moralist, the Peterson voice here, he can't hold on to the answers, but he can hold on to the questions. What it means to bring morality into the equation and to set some framework, the conservative voice can say, these are the questions we have to ask of every moment, not these are the answers that we can give for every moment for the rest of future history. And the empiricist can say, how did I feel in that moment? How do I feel about those answers? The judgment for me of the quality of engagement with the moral question is the feeling that the empiricist will observe, is the experience that we will then take in. And so that questioning that leads to the creativity is then taken as learning and goes back into this dialectic pot to cook up the next moment. In a sense, I think we have been trying to understand more about our human experience through a telescope, and maybe I'm interested more in looking through a time and space microscope that drills us right into the moment and interrogates it at that microscopic level. And so whatever your big story of culture is, whether you're a Christian, you subscribe to that in the long arc of existence, whether you're a Zen Buddhist, whether you subscribe to an atheistic popular story or none at all, I don't care. What I want to know about is your small moments, your small stories. I want to meet you there where that magic actually bubbles up and builds support and understanding and awareness at a moment level, so that can build up and cascade out to different experiences more broadly.
Clearly, religious conceptions shift, although there's a core tradition that remains intact. I've looked for what might be regarded as eternal verities in the moral domain. The beautiful is more valuable than the ugly.
Yeah.
Truth is to be sought after in opposition to falsehood.
Yeah.
So these eternal verities, I've never heard that phrase before, could also be posed as questions rather than just making statements. The mobilizing question is, where is the beauty? Where is the truth? And how do we get at it?
That's particularly true in relationship to the spoken word. The spoken word brings about remarkable transformations of reality itself. And it's for that reason that verbal truth is constitutive.
If it is transformative, it might be wickedly so, or it might be negatively so.
It depends on the motive. It's the motive, and this is, I suppose, to some degree why I'm skeptical, let's say, of the atheist skepticism. There's a destructive element to it. There's no archaeological redemption.
But that's nothing to do with motive. You said it was all about the motive.
Well, that's not necessarily the case, that it has nothing to do with motive. Motive's a tough one.
Yeah, it is. I mean, if my motive is to make money and I make a great discovery, it's as valuable as if my motive was to make a great discovery and I made a great discovery. The great discovery is made. How is the motive relevant?
Well, because your motives determine the decisions you make along the way.
Yeah.
If I'm fundamentally motivated by the belief that being is worth preserving, let's say, because on the whole it's a good, I'm going to react and think much differently than if I'm ambivalent about that, or if I feel at the bottom of my soul that the whole bloody project is of questionable utility and might as well be shelved.
This is like the best. To me, this is like the most beautiful conversation that I wouldn't be surprised if this is the most beautiful conversation they ever have together. It's one of the, I mean, clearly it's just very beautiful. The two men of great intellectual prowess reaching the end of themselves together in a somewhat trusted environment. Oh, it's just, this is what I'm saying when I think we are maybe getting towards a moment of explosive creativity, because bloody hell, you know, Peterson's coming in from his protection side. He knows that if your motives are set up one way, it makes the likelihood of the outcomes different. And he believes in the intentionality that morality gives you going into action. So if you set the right questions, and he thinks have the right answers, that will set you on a course that will lead you to more good. And Fry is coming in from the other side and saying, yes, but I will just evaluate what happens. And if you make a good thing, it is good regardless of whether you meant it to be good. But can you see like the softness of them? They're not prickly. They're getting together. They're coming together. It's not like the Harris Peterson conversation. These guys are in their homes now, not on stage with thousands of people and not trying to give them a show. They're just having a chat before Fry's got to go for dinner, and it's lovely. They're coming close. They're getting very, very close. It's overwhelming. Weirdly, it's overwhelming for me. For me, that is the wrestle. What they're getting close to is this liminal space between the two ways, the two lenses by which you can get into a moment. They're getting close. My belief is in an uncertain, unprecedented world, you have to experiment. You have to embrace the inner empiricist and bring it smaller, make the experiments small, and the observations and the learning and creativity cycles quicker. You have to bring it down to the momentary level, and you can't have rules for moments. The closest you can get is to have questions for moments that last over time. And so maybe I will ask Peterson for that to be his next book, Questions for Moments. In the same week, my friend Ollie sent me this video. I love Lex Friedman. I listen to loads of his stuff. This clip was just of great clarity from Sam Harris.
Without any serving it up, without any explanation, what is the meaning of life?
It's either the wrong question or that question is answered by paying sufficient attention to any present moment such that there's no basis upon which to pose that question. It's not answered in the usual way. It's not a matter of having more information. It's having more engagement with reality as it is. And
this is the last couple of minutes of a beautiful conversation, a relaxed conversation. You can see, I think Sam gets a bit further than he does in some of his more adversarial conversations. And again, Sam is asking us to dive deeper into engagement. Reality as it is
in the present moment, or consciousness as it is in the present moment. You don't ask that question when you're most captivated by the most important thing you ever pay attention to. That question only gets asked when you're abstracted away from that experience, that peak experience, and you're left wondering, why are so many of my other experiences mediocre, right? Like, why am I repeating the same pleasures every day? Why is my Netflix queue just, when's this going to run out? Like, I've seen so many shows like this. Am I really going to watch another one? Like, that's a moment where you're not actually having the beatific vision. You're not sunk into the present moment. You're not truly in love. Like, you're in a relationship with somebody who you know conceptually you love, right? This is the person you're living your life with, but you don't actually feel good together. In those moments where attention hasn't found a good enough reason to truly sink into the present so as to obviate any concern like that. You always think that your life has to change, the world has to change, so that you can finally have a good enough excuse to just be here, and here is enough, that where the present moment becomes totally captivating. You can actually just train yourself to do that on demand, so that just looking at a cup can be good enough in precisely that way. And any sense that it might not be is recognized to be a thought that mysteriously unravels the moment you notice it, that the moment expands and becomes more diaphanous. And then there's no evidence that this isn't the best moment of your life. The sense that there is some kind of basis for doubt about the rightness of being in the world in this moment, that can evaporate when you pay attention. And kind of the meta answer to that question, the meaning of life for me is to live in that mode more and more.
I mean, this is the best I've ever heard Sam Harris as well, like the clearest. He is taking us into that realm, that microscopic realm of experience that Peterson and Fry are courting with. Peterson's trying to check motive to make sure you're coming into moments well, and Fry is wanting to observe them and see what the result of them was without using the language. But here, Harris is actually showing us that they are enough. Being in the moment is enough. And this is the realm of experience being viewed at what I think is the most helpful level.
Whenever I notice I'm not in that mode, to recognize it and return, to cease more and more to take the reasons why not at face value, because we all have reasons why we can't be fulfilled in this moment. We're constantly deferring our sense of, this is it. This is not a dress rehearsal. This is the show. We just have these moments on the calendar where we think, okay, this is where it's all going to land. Is that vacation I planned with my 5 best friends. We do this once every 3 years, and now we're going, and here we are on the beach together. Unless you have a mind that can really pay attention, really cut through the chatter, really sink into the present moment, you can't even enjoy those moments the way they should be enjoyed, the way you dreamed you would enjoy them when they arrive.
Doesn't matter how good it is, if you can't see it for what it is, you'll miss it. The logical extension of that ends up being that big moments, what we think of as big moments, don't really matter. If you can't find value, it doesn't matter what the moment is. And actually, in the end, if you think about the efficiency of that which you value, it ends up leaving you with the mundane, ends up leaving you with the small everyday moments. Because if you can get super excited about drinking a cup of coffee, then why would you need to do anything that you can put on your Instagram? Why do you need to travel around the world and put all that effort in? It'd just be inefficient for achieving the kind of value and happiness of what's right in front of you, the people right on your door, the adventures you can go on every day. And that gives, I think, an easiness of come and go, provides essentially the product of which is a depth of character and of openness to the world, because ultimately, wherever the river meanders, I will be able to derive meaningful experience and value, and ultimately what we would describe as happiness from that. And it's good.
There's just a mirage-like quality to every future attainment and every future breakthrough and every future peak experience eventually you get the lesson that you don't arrive until you cease to step over the present moment in search of the next thing.
Boom! You do not arrive until you cease to step over the present moment in pursuit of the next thing. That is the nail on the head. That is what being here means, not being overly goal orientated where you miss what's really going on.
You can't actually become happy. You can only be happy. It's the illusion that your future being happy can be predicated on this act of becoming in any domain, and becoming includes this sort of further scientific understanding on the questions that interest you, or getting in better shape, or whatever the thing is, whatever the contingency of your dissatisfaction seems to be in any present moment. It's not that you just have to dissolve into a puddle of goo. I mean, you can still get in shape and you can still do all the things that, the superficial things that are obviously good to do. But the sense that your well-being is over there really does diminish, and eventually just becomes a kind of non sequitur.
The last bit he's saying, it's all about here. It's all at this momentary level. But yeah, you can still make plans to make you get in shape and be good. Left just at this microscopic level, it doesn't give us much of a guide for how to do that together, how to think about the future, how to make plans so that the life that we want comes about over time. Struggle to achieve what you want in 1 year, but you'll be surprised what you can do over 5. The whole answer is not just there. I got a friend coming for lunch, so I'm going to do part 2 later. Catch you later. Right, I'm back from lunch. In that first half, we're looking at Peterson coming in from this side. We got Fry coming in from that side. And then Harris actually trying to talk to us about this crucible of human experience, these moments that we have to try to engage more deeply with to drive meaning out of them. I'm reminded of a video I saw the other day that I want to show us through a little bit by a guy called Richard Rohr. He's definitely a scholar, and the way he critiques the history of the church is pretty cool. I guess philosophers and theologians are interested in the business of life and death and marriage and how to live a good life or how to make the most of life, and they have different ways of getting at that. But I like what Richard Rohr says. I want to share a couple of minutes of it about why the church might have missed some of the good stuff.
Both in Eastern Orthodoxy and in Roman Catholicism, we aligned ourselves with empire. Once you align the message of a spiritual teacher with imperial thinking, there's a whole bunch of questions you can't ask anymore.
This sort of like relationship between church and state has been there for so long, since Constantine, that we can't even imagine, in the case of Christianity, what it looks like to experience like the teachings of this Nazarene without this sort of power relationship going on.
And you can only see what you're told to look for. What we settle for were what I call belief systems and belonging systems.
You can only see what you're told to look for, like a goldfish who doesn't know they're in water. Instead of trusting our own eyes and our own powers of observation of what we're seeing, we trust for belief systems and belonging systems that basically shield us from the reality of the unknown and the uncertain.
Religion is always looking for one absolute, one highly exalted absolute, because that tends to hold the group together.
And that big story is the belief system that helps with the belonging.
You are the light of the world too. Well, I've never heard a preacher in all my years in the church connect those two phrases.
I've quite enjoyed the Quaker movement. You've got Dame Judi Dench, you got Hosier, you got a few random people, quite nature connected people who have this quiet faith. And at the heart of the practice of sitting in the silence in Quakerism is this belief that we all have an inner light, that we all have the ability to listen. And then in this silence, people stand up in those meetings and speak and say something if they feel led to, which for me is a practice that, one, allows you to confront the reality of the quiet and everything that we find there in our own minds and in the environment. But then also this creative belief that that light inside us might breathe life, as Peterson was saying, might have something to say, to manifest into the world. And there's an expectation that each of us would be different in that and diverse, but interested in what each other's have got to say. This concept of moments is not new to me. And I want to show you, 5 years ago, I got inspired by Tom Copps and my mate's beautiful song called Moments. I called him and said, would he be up for coming to join me at this conference, and we ended it like this.
Guard your spare moments. They are like uncut diamonds. Discard them and their value will never be known. Improve them and they will become the brightest gems in a useful future. So there's always been value in moments. We know that. We experience them every day and love them. But the difference is now, if we get involved in this free social web business world, then whether we're a creator or a consumer, we're a part of that ecosystem, that ecology. We are in the business of moments. And the issue really is, who do we want to share those moments with? And how do we want to be treated in those moments? And I don't think fundamentally you can create moments or produce them on a factory line, but you can create space for moments to occur. And I would like to invite you into a space that resonated with me deeply when I was driving in my car back down to San Francisco, and see if it resonates with you in a similar way to how it did with me. And if you do get value out of this space, then you've got a few options with it, right? You can kind of ignore it and carry on typing away on your phone or on your emails or whatever. You can be reminded of a special moment you shared with a loved one and send them a little text quickly and tell them that you're thinking of them. You can get some content, some guys are, grab it, share it on Facebook or Twitter, and share that value with your wider world and with the platforms through which you're uploading the content, feeding their economy of eyeballs. Or you could shut your eyes altogether. Maybe look a bit silly, but you could shut your eyes altogether and try and absorb every inch of value in this space for yourself right now. But it's your moment, so you get to do with it what you want. That's the cool thing. I just wanted to let you know that everybody else values your moment so deeply. You better flipping well value it yourself too.
And the moments that you live for, where are they now? Where are they now? Who can remember? Do you remember? Where are they now? Where are they? I told you patiently we waited for one more day like any other day. You know you'll find a way. Are you waiting? Are you waiting? Oh, the moments that you live for, where are they now? Where are they now? And do you remember? Who can remember? Where are they now? Where are they now? Where are they? Oh, where are they? Oh, where are they? Where are the moments, these moments we live for, these moments we sacrifice everything for? And the moments that you live for, where are they now? Where are they now? And do you remember? Who can remember? Where are they now? Where are they now? Where are they?
Get in there, Tom Cotson, you delicious man. That was one of my favorite talks to do, and probably one of the last talks I did before I kind of left my position in work and life. But the beginning of a new chapter in a beautiful friendship with Tom, and we ended up going on the Corco tours together and doing lots of time in the woods and pushing his baby in a pram around the hospital car park whilst they're getting scanned for their new child on the way. So this journey of thinking about and valuing moments. Even my very first blog was called Moments, Thoughts and Stories. And then the final thing I want to show you is, in the last couple of months, I've done a couple of podcasts, one called Wonder Space with my friend Steve Cole. And this is how I ended it. I really believe that we do have enough time. And I think that if you believe you truly have enough time, it changes everything about how you go about your day. And the futures we want to build for ourselves and for our families and for our communities and societies are all based off interactions, small moments where we connect in various different ways with each other, with systems. And if we ultimately think that we don't have enough time and we're operating out of a lack and a rush and a doingness, we can miss every single one of those moments that goes into building our collective futures and lives together. And so I think just taking a moment to pause and accept that there is enough time, I have agency, I have choice, I can decide what to do with my day, helps you approach each moment in a very different way, or at least that's how I've found it to be since coming back out of my time in retreat. And that's what I want to leave you with. And then the end of an amazing time with Tim Lovejoy on the Lovejoy Hour. He hit me with a swerve ball. And I love being hit with a bit of a curveball because you just plug straight into the intuitive self and there's no plan. And often it's when I listen back to it, I think, oh, maybe that's what I really feel.
And the final question, what's the meaning of life? Nice, easy one.
The meaning in life. I don't believe that there is the meaning of life. I fundamentally, philosophically, don't believe that that's a truth that we can aspire to. But I do think it's incredibly vital that we find the meaning in life. And it leads me back to what we've just spoken about, which is the meaning in life comes from that quiet place, us really saying what we want, who we really are, that authentic voice that rises, and then following that down the rabbit hole as far as we can, with us having as much joy and fun and protecting that for others as possible. So the meaning in life comes from being honest in the moment.
Perfect.
It seems to be coming back to me in those moments of unplanned unscriptedness. If these are the valuable, potent pockets of life itself, let's focus on it. Let's build up resources and thinking and practices and ways of engaging with them directly, the microscope that can come with us into our everyday life, rather than just every now and again happening to use the term in a sentence as a throwaway thing and then getting drawn towards the bigger stories. Why not take it seriously and have some fun with it? I started talking with Maria, and she has a whole bit on the architecture of moments. And then I spoke to my friend Tom Flack. They're all called Tom. And he said he's up for coming this summer and he's going to come and stay with me here in the studio. And we're going to try and pull this book together. My mate Smitherman said that he would help publish the book. A little coffee shop across the road. I might invite people to come have discourse around moments and think about, reflect on the moments that matter to us. Why do they matter? How do they work? Where are they coming from? Where are they going to? Is there enough in the concept that can allow us to actually build a life around, to give us stability in uncertain times? Can the idea of moments allow us to adapt effectively in the face of uncertainty? I don't know, but it's certainly worth a try. And I can't stop thinking about it. So it feels like now's the time, basically. Well, for me, firstly, to try and take moments seriously, and hopefully put something together with you, for you, that might help build some footing for you for life to deal with the uncertain times we're going back into. It feels like not just a book, not just my life's work even, but my whole life, everything I was born into, every bit of travel and journey I've done on my own, everything I've learned through business and through splatterings of academia, my relationships, my love, my creative, everything is just feels like gets pulled on to try to pull this together. And I really, really hope that you guys will like it. I'm hoping that we can pull something together this summer and then produce it and hopefully get it out for Christmas or the new year. There's a lot in here. All right, guys, take care of yourselves and look after each other. I'll hopefully see you soon.